Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got quite a range of sources you sent in this time. I mean, they really cover the map of global risk, everything from intense nuclear standoffs and major military moves to, well, how a single pretty small lie can spread like wildfire online.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because the material really forces you to think about how global crises unfold at, like, two totally different speeds.
Right.
You've got the slow burn, the calculated security dilemmas, the nuclear programs,
Yeah.
where the aim is often just to buy time.
Okay.
But then, bam, you've got information or disinformation moving at the speed of a viral tweet. It can whip up a huge crisis from almost nothing in just hours.
That contrasts the deliberate slow game versus the digital lightning strike that's really our focus today. We're going to try and cut through the noise and give you the key insights on three big friction points.
Yeah.
We'll look at a tense power balance in the Middle East, the really significant step up in U.S. actions in the Americas, and, yeah, that bizarre story about Germany supposedly canceling Christmas.
And all three, really, they circle back to how we define and handle security threats today. Maybe let's start with the one that played out online, the Christmas market one, because it really hits home how fast trust can be undermined.
Okay, sounds good. So, this viral claim, Germany cancels Christmas. It just took off, didn't it? TikTok, X, Instagram.
Yeah, everywhere.
Saw really dramatic headlines, like hundreds of Germany's famous Christmas markets were being shut down for 2025. Some posts got, what, over 500,000 views?
Which is incredible because the claim is just flat out false. Utterly false. Germany has, thousands of these markets every year. Weihnachtsmärkte, Christkindlmarkt, over 2,500 usually.
Right.
Now, were there any cancellations? Yes, but very few and totally localized, like one market in Rostock, another in Hamburg's Rahlstedt district, apparently due to low profits, maybe Dortmund's Bolschwing Castle market because of renovations.
Yeah.
But absolutely zero evidence of some kind of mass shutdown.
So wait, this huge global scare story, it came from just one source. Doesn't that make the reaction seem, wildly out of proportion?
Well, yes, but that's information warfare for you. The lie was traced back to one specific article from a site called Duna Press.
Duna Press, okay.
Yeah, and it cited unaffordable security costs and only named two small towns, Rheinfeld and Schongau.
And when someone actually checked.
Exactly. Reporters looked into it. Schongau confirmed its market is definitely happening. And the specific area named Rheinfeld, which is actually a district within a larger town called Dormagen, well, they haven't even had a market there in recent years anyway.
So completely fabricated details, but the speed it spread was real, and the tactics they used.
Very revealing. The listed author, Bianca Ferenze, seems to have no real online history, no verifiable background. And get this, the author photos, and even the images in the article, likely AI generated.
Yeah.
They basically spun a whole crisis out of thin air, built it from scratch.
But they often need a hook, right? A grain of truth.
Exactly. And here it was the legitimate issue of rising security costs.
Yep.
That's the vulnerability they latched onto. After the terrible attacks in Berlin back in 2016 and more recently in Magdeburg in 2024, cities are facing higher costs from mandatory security upgrades.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. That's the link. So, like in Magdeburg, you mentioned the costs there.
Yeah, the estimates were that standard security, concrete barriers, maybe bag checks, video monitoring, those costs were expected to almost double, jump from around 80,000 to 150,000 just for this year.
Okay, so a real local budget headache for a city manager.
Gets instantly twisted by someone acting in bad faith into this huge false narrative about, Germany cancels Christmas or the erosion of German culture.
It's a perfect example, isn't it, how fast a local operational problem can be weaponized into national or even international disinformation.
Precisely. And that speed, that velocity, it really contrasts with the calculated, slow-moving nature of some other geopolitical risks.
Which brings us neatly to the Middle East. Let's shift there, where the threat isn't measured in shares and views, but in kilograms of highly enriched uranium.
Yeah, starting with Iran's nuclear strategy. Analysts are really describing it as a sort of masterclass in crisis management. You have the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, publicly swatting away President Trump's offer for talks.
Calling it imposition and harassment, I think.
That's right. Maintaining a very defiant public stance, pushing back hard against any idea the U.S. had somehow crippled their nuclear capabilities.
So the rhetoric is definitely turned up high, but the actions maybe suggest something else, more caution.
It seems that way.
Right.
Analysts like Hamidreza Azizi suggest Iran is deliberately playing this crisis management game to, well, buy time.
Why buy time? What's the fear?
The thinking is they're worried that making a really drastic move, like actually pulling out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, could trigger an immediate Israeli or maybe U.S. military strike, especially now, with regional tensions still high after that 12-day war with Israel recently.
Right. So Iran keeps saying officially its program is just for civilian and energy purposes.
But the IAEA, the UN's nuclear watchdog, keeps sounding the alarm, right? Warning that Iran's enrichment levels are getting dangerously close to weapons grade.
That tension really captures the brinkmanship. And then the E3 countries, France, Germany, the UK, they triggered the sanctions snapback mechanism.
Which basically reimposed a whole set of older UN penalties. And Iran's response to that was to declare cooperation with the IAEA superfluous.
Sounds like slamming the door shut. But have communications actually stopped?
Apparently not completely. Despite the tough public language, it looks like they've kept some channels open, maybe just slightly ajar.
How so?
Well, there's evidence of indirect talks still happening with the U.S. There are parallel discussions going on with European countries, and maybe even talks about potential prisoner exchanges. So the rhetoric is hot, but the underlying calculation seems pretty cold and careful.
Okay, if we shift focus slightly south from that nuclear calculus down to Gaza, the human security situation there, it just remains absolutely dire, a real tragedy.
What really stands out from the sources is just the devastating human cost linked directly to decisions about access, specifically medical access.
You mean access to hospitals outside Gaza?
Exactly. Dr. Fadi Atrash, who's the CEO of Augusta Victoria Hospital in East Jerusalem, he stressed how vital and efficient it would be to reopen the medical route for Gazans to the East Jerusalem hospital network.
And why is that route so important?
It's not just about it being closer. It's the whole system. They share the same language, the same culture. And crucially, they already have the medical records for many Gazan patients. It makes treatment much smoother and more effective.
But that route hasn't reopened, has it? Israel cited security concerns after October 7th.
That's right. And the cost of keeping it closed is just heartbreaking. The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza reported that in the year leading up to August 2025, at least 740 people died while they were stuck on waiting lists for care they couldn't get.
740 people.
Including almost 140 children. Specific names like 8-year-old Sadi Abu Taha mentioned in the reports. Dying while waiting. That number. It really underscores the real-world cost of these administrative blockades. It's such a stark, tragic contrast to the slow, calculated risks we see elsewhere.
Absolutely. And even as this humanitarian crisis goes on, there's planning for what happens next, post-war stabilization. But that seems complicated too.
Very. There are talks about putting together a multinational stabilization force, maybe around 5,000 troops, likely led by Egypt.
And their job would be what? Disarming Hamas?
Primarily, yes. Disarming Hamas and providing security for a transitional Palestinian government.
And who would run that government?
Well, the report suggests the main Palestinian factions, Hamas and Fatah, have actually agreed, at least in principle, to let an independent committee of technocrats handle the day-to-day administration.
But the sticking point seems to be who gets to be in that stabilization force.
Precisely. Turkey, for instance. They're a major regional power, capable Muslim military, and they were even a guarantor of the Trump ceasefire deal. But they're likely going to be excluded.
Why?
Israeli objections, mainly. The view from Israel is that Turkish President Erdogan is too closely aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood, and by extension, Hamas.
Okay, so political friction there. And then there's the whole dispute over aid delivery, specifically about UNRWA, the UN agency.
Yeah, a major point of contention. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was very explicit, saying UNRWA should have no future role, even calling it a subsidiary of Hamas.
That's a strong statement. And it puts the U.S. position directly against the International Court of Justice, right?
Absolutely. The ICJ, in an advisory opinion, called UNRWA an irreplaceable vehicle for distributing aid in Gaza. So two completely opposing views there.
And meanwhile, the aid itself, is it getting through as planned?
Not even close. The numbers tell the story. The Trump ceasefire plan, which Israel accepted, called for 600 aid trucks a day.
600, okay.
The actual average since that agreement, just 89 trucks a day.
89. That's what, only about 14%.
Exactly, just 14% of the agreed commitment. Yeah. It's a really clear sign that, despite agreements on paper, the severe humanitarian blockade is effectively still in place.
That analysis of calculated restrictions of blockades, it actually leads us quite smoothly to the Americas, because there we're seeing another massive projection of force, but this time the justification, the rhetoric around it has escalated dramatically.
Yeah, we're witnessing a really significant maybe even disproportionate step up in U.S. military and political activity in the Southern Command region. It starts with deploying the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier and its entire strike group.
A carrier strike group, that's huge.
It is. It brings nearly 4,500 extra sailors, 9 aircraft squadrons. The stated purpose is to disrupt drug trafficking.
But military analysts are pointing out, aren't they, that a force that big seems like overkill just for stopping drug boats at sea?
That's the critique, yes. It seems much larger than what you'd need purely for maritime interception. And this deployment coincides with a major shift in how the administration is talking about the issue. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth put it very bluntly.
What did she say?
He directly compared drug traffickers to groups like al-Qaeda. He said, and I'm quoting here, "If you are a narco-terrorist smuggling drugs in our hemisphere, we'll treat you like we treat al-Qaeda. We will map your networks, track your people, hunt you down, and kill you."
Wow. Hunt you down and kill you.
That's right.
That's invoking counterterrorism language and doctrine against drug cartels.
Exactly. And it's not just rhetoric. It's led to actual kinetic strikes. The pace has picked up quickly. At least 43 people reported killed in these strikes since early September, with like 3 strikes happening in just one recent week.
And President Trump himself has talked about using land action, possibly in Venezuela.
He has. He's asserted the U.S. is now in an armed conflict with the cartels. And crucially, he's claiming authority under the same legal framework used after the 9/11 attacks.
The AUMF, the Authorization for Use of Military Force.
Precisely.
How has Venezuela reacted to all this? President Maduro.
Predictably, very strongly. Maduro accused the U.S. of fabricating a war, just as an excuse to deploy forces near Venezuela. And Venezuela has been running its own defense drills along its very long coastline, clearly anticipating potential U.S. action.
So you have this military buildup and threat, and it seems to be happening alongside increased political pressure on countries critical of the U.S., like Colombia.
That's the other side of the coin, yes. We saw the U.S. impose sanctions on Colombian President Gustavo Petro, who has been a very vocal Trump critic, and also sanctions on his wife, his son, and his Interior Minister, Armando Benedetti.
And the official reason for the sanctions?
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent accused Petro of basically letting drug cartels flourish under his watch.
How did Petro respond to that?
He hit back hard, said his government had actually seized more cocaine than any previous Colombian government in history. He called the sanctions arbitrariness typical of an oppressive regime.
And there's some history here, too, isn't there? Didn't Petro have his U.S. visa revoked before?
He did. That happened after he made a public statement urging U.S. soldiers deployed in the region to, quote, disobey the orders of Trump, obey the orders of humanity. So placing the sanctions in that context, it really suggests they might be more about punishing a political critic than just about drug policy.
So the military surge and the targeted sanctions, they look like maybe 2 parts of a single strategy.
That's certainly how many regional analysts are reading it. Elizabeth Dickinson, who analyzes the Andes region, summed it up very clearly. She argued the massive military presence isn't really about stopping drugs per se.
What's it about then, according to her?
It's about sending a message, a very clear message. The U.S. will use military force against leaders in countries that don't fall in line. Her conclusion was pretty stark. Drugs are the excuse.
Drugs are the excuse. Okay, that brings us towards the end of this deep dive. And wow, what a spectrum we've covered. From the incredibly cautious, calculated brinkmanship in Tehran to the just devastating human cost of the aid blockade in Gaza. And now this major escalation of military force and really a whole new military doctrine being applied in the Americas.
All happening while, simultaneously, the global information space demands constant vigilance just to figure out if, local security budget issues have somehow canceled Christmas.
Right. It's a lot to track.
It really is. And maybe that leads to a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. The U.S. administration has now officially labeled drug cartels as unlawful combatants. They've deployed huge military assets, justifying it as fighting an armed conflict using the post-9/11 legal basis.
Equating them with al-Qaeda, basically.
Exactly. So the question to consider is, how might this fundamental reclassification, putting transnational criminal organizations on the same legal footing as designated terrorist groups, how might that reshape international law? And what could it mean for the future rules of military engagement around the world in the years ahead?
A really profound question for a very complex time. Thank you for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.